And this is not about saving money. It's going to cost America more money in the very near future because of what has happened this week. Because we're going to see increase in new HIV infections around the world. We are dismantling healthcare structures, healthcare systems. We are sending away qualified individuals, doctors and nurses, who are going to go to other sectors because people need to pay for their bills. They're not going to sit around and wait for the US government to come back and hire them again. They're going to go look for other jobs. And so it will take us years to build this, what we've just done, this 1 week or 2 weeks damage. It will take years to build it back. And it will cost American taxpayers more money. So this is not about saving money. It's not about DEI. It's not about saving money. It's an agenda that they have to dismantle global health because they don't believe in it.
Hello, everyone. Raif Derrazi here, and today I'm excited to have a conversation with our special guest, Michael Ighodaro, to discuss what is going on in the world as far as PEPFAR goes, as far as funding, and how that's impacting Sub-Saharan Africa primarily, but everywhere. Michael, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
For having me. Hi.
I know you're so busy. You have so many things going on, especially right now. So I just want to say I really appreciate you taking the time to sit and talk with me for a bit.
No, thank you. This is important. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's vital.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we jump in, a little bit about you. Michael Ighodaro is a thought leader, public speaker, and global human rights advocate, specializing in corporate inclusion and cultural advisory regarding race, immigration, and orientation equality. As a senior public health and rights expert with over a decade of experience in strategy, analytics, and programs operations and management, he currently serves as the executive director of Global Black Gay Men Connect, or GBGMC, and president of Global Black Pride. With a robust international background, Michael has worked in over 20 countries, translating advocates' demands into actionable policies and health programs. He has extensive period in fundraising and public relations, having collaborated with national governments, the private sector, and communities on several public health initiatives worldwide. Michael's work includes a significant role in a multi-million-dollar advocacy project and a history of leadership positions, such as his former co-chair role at Outright Action International, a leading global LGBT organization. Recognized by President Obama in 2015 as a champion of change, his contributions have been featured in major publications and media outlets such as the Huffington Post, BuzzFeed, the New York Times, Al Jazeera America, BBC, and UN News. Michael has also been involved with Housing Works, AVAC, and was a co-executive director at the Prevention Access Campaign. He has remained active with Outright Action International, transitioning from a fellow to co-chair of the board of directors. Okay, so you have a little bit of experience.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, you've been there and back again a few times. That's incredible. Okay. Well, I'd like to start off with kind of a broad question, and you can feel free to answer it however you like. But what is your assessment of the current state of the global HIV/AIDS epidemic?
Well, I think it's both an exciting time, but also very, very depressing time for us all at Global Health. I think we've never had the most scientific breakthrough than we have right now. We have a lot of scientific breakthrough in terms of like treatment, prevention. We have once a day treatment. We have once a month or once every 2 months long acting prevention. We have once every 6 months injections that can prevent you for HIV. So we have a lot of scientific breakthrough. We have, we are making advancement in cure. So there's a lot happening that we all should be excited about, that we all should be privileged to be part of, actually. But also at the same time, right now, we are in the most difficult time we've ever been in terms of global health and HIV globally. And I think, U.S. government has been the most important donor and the most important funder in terms of HIV globally. So for them to be taking a step back, it's a huge, 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 huge drastic impact that it's having. Already, it's just been 2 weeks. And it has felt like the end of the world. And for global health advocates, so if you know anyone who works in this field, it's the right time to give them a hug and just like say you care. And this is important because they are having it right now.
Yeah, exactly. I saw a meme recently that said January has been the longest year. And I agree.
Focusing global health, it's been the longest 2 years, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I heard in one of your previous talks that PEPFAR was instrumental in your ability to get treatment while you lived in Nigeria. What are the implications of PEPFAR funding if it's suddenly withdrawn overnight?
Yeah, I mean, just think about it. I think people sort of, mistake the fact that we have all of this scientific breakthrough to the fact that AIDS is over. Like, it's not. We still don't have the most important breakthrough, which is cure. And so, just to understand that, for you to stay, keep your viral load suppressed, for you to be able to live healthy, for you to be able to have a fulfilling life, you have to take a treatment. And so, without treatment, people develop AIDS, and when you develop AIDS, you die from complications. And so, that's very real. And so, right now, the only reason why we have an HIV movement, we have any kind of sustained sort of movement, it's because we have treatment, and because people who are living with HIV are taking their treatment. And so they are the bedrock of our movement. If we take that treatment away, we'll be back to the 80s. Remember in New York City, in San Francisco, around the world, where people were dying of HIV, dying of AIDS, and that could come back really quickly if we don't act. So for me, back in Nigeria, I think, I was alive because of people who cared, and because the American people who cared to provide HIV medication for me. If I did not have that, I wouldn't be here standing here today. And the same for many people, millions of people around the world who depend on the US government, who depend on the HIV movement, who depend on their treatment to stay alive. And so taking that away would mean literally death sentence, not just for people who are living with HIV, but for people globally around the world who have to stay to make sure they don't get HIV infected. So we have to take prevention. So right now, just an example is the waiver that the U.S. government has put out for this stop work freeze that they put out. So they have a waiver that you can, if you're on treatment, you can get your treatment. But also, they didn't include prevention. Prevention is so important. PrEP is so crucial because for folks to stay to have to stay HIV negative, they have to take their medication. They have to take PrEP. So if they don't have access to PrEP, that means we're going to see increase in new infections globally, especially around key population, around with gay men, trans people, sex workers, people who inject drugs. If folks are not having access to PrEP, we are going to see an increase in new HIV infections.
Right. And just to give a little context, not just in Nigeria, but in sub-Saharan Africa, do you like these clinics, when we talk about clinics and organizations that are dependent on PEPFAR, are we talking like a 10% of their budget it comes from PEPFAR? Is it wholly from PEPFAR? Like how dramatic of an impact is that across the board?
But just to take a step back to say, the reason why a lot of these countries are dependent on PEPFAR and dependent on U.S. government for resources and medication and funding, it's because a lot of African countries, they've been hit with a lot of sanctions, a lot of barriers, a lot of economic sanctions that make it difficult for them to be able to care for their people. And so, and also some of them discriminate against the same people that they want to care about. So a lot of in African countries, we have laws that criminalizes being gay, being trans, or being sex workers. So most of these people, even in public health care centers, cannot afford to go to the centers to get their treatment. But also the government cannot afford to pay for all of the treatment for all of its people because of the sanctions, or because of the economic barriers that these countries have. So
Where are those sanctions coming from?
from European governments, from US governments. So these countries cannot afford for because of economic
Mm.
barriers, they cannot afford to completely care for their people. So, I think it's a two-way thing. That's why some of this, as advocates, we've advocated for the US government to step in. Because yes, HIV might be, again, there might be people around the world, in Africa, in the Caribbean, in Asia, who depends on the US government. But as we know from COVID, viruses do not have borders. It can cross, it can come here anytime. So it's also on the US government interest to make sure that, people who are living with HIV have access to treatment so that they don't have new increases of new HIV infections. So just want to provide that context that, that's why people are dependent on the US government. And that's why it's so crucial for us as Americans to hold our government accountable to make sure they are, continue to provide this life-saving medication.
Yeah, that's such a profound clarification that you made because we, and by we, I mean the US and European Western countries, have made these countries in sub Saharan Africa essentially dependent on them. And now we're stripping them of funding. So we've put them in a precarious position, and it would be unfair to say, well, you need to take care of yourself. Well, we've already handicapped you in a way by way of sanctions.
Yeah, I mean, we've totally like dismantled a lot of their economic gains, and sort of when they took over, some of them are dependent on America, on British, on French, and Germans. And so again, not to say that foreign aid sometimes is not it's not meant from a good perspective, but also as we know, it's based on security and safety of the foreigner who's providing the aid. So it's not always of the good interest of the people who are receiving the aid. So it always comes with caveat, like we're giving you this so we can get this. So it's not always in the best interest of the people. But again, as a public health advocate, I believe it's important, and regardless of all of these other sidetracks or whatever it is, that the U.S. government do not step back. If PEPFAR was to cut off today, we could be seeing up to 10 million people die of AIDS. That's really, really crucial. We could be seeing up to 10 million people die of AIDS. So it's really, really important that, we don't allow this catastrophe to happen. Because again, this is so, so important. As Americans, we should care about AIDS. We should care about AIDS, obviously, know that AIDS is not over, but also know that, our government, as taxpayers, we want to make sure they are using our money in the good interest of humanity as well.
How engaged with advocacy were you when you lived in Nigeria? And was there a lot of stigma around being gay and or having HIV? And what was the government's role in that? Was it helpful or unhelpful? And has that changed over time?
Oh God, yeah. I worked in Nigeria from a very young age in support groups of gay men, and key populations. What we call key populations now are sex workers, people who inject drugs, transgender people. Because the reason why we call them key population is that they have the highest risk of infections when it comes to HIV, but also due to the lack of access to care services, that's why they have the highest risk of new HIV infections. Um,
And do you say that, sorry to interrupt, do you say that instead of saying something like target populations or at risk?
Yeah, I don't think we are at risk per se, because I think when you say at risk, it makes the person it makes it behavior, and it's not about the behavior. It's about the criminalization and the perspective and the stigma that people have that makes it difficult for folks who want to access healthcare services. The structural barriers, the racism, the homophobia, the transphobia. I think that's what at risk, not the people, not the behavior at all. Because I'm again, as a gay man, I'm content with who I am. I don't think my sexual preference or who I go to bed with is at risk per se. It's the fact that I have no access to PrEP or condoms or lubricant. That's the problem, not my sexual behavior.
Well said. Did you see firsthand the impacts of HIV and AIDS in the communities there?
Yeah, I mean, God, I think, back when I was in Nigeria, we didn't even have PrEP. And so a lot of community-based organizations really had to fight for their space and really had to make sure that the government was paying attention. This was Nigeria where people didn't believe there were gay people, right? It sounds like it was like from the outside that gay people did not exist. So we had to show that we existed. We had to use data and science to say, hey, in Nigeria, at least 2% of your population are LGBTQI. And so you need to care about it. And so you need to make sure if you want to end HIV in your community, if you want to end, discrimination, stigma, you have to care about the people who are mostly discriminated against. And so for us, we have to be visible. Sometimes it came at a risk. My friends, my community, some of them were attacked, some of them were killed because of who they are. In Nigeria right now, we have a law that, if you were gay or LGBTQI, you could go to jail for 14 years. And so you can see, and people are still being able to be vocal and also to be able to speak out because, again, it's a matter of life and death. And if you don't speak out, how can your community have access to services? So crucial.
Okay, so just to clarify, to reiterate what you said, if you are gay now or LGBTQI plus in Nigeria, you can go to jail for 14 years. Just
Absolutely.
for be
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
So, you know, it's a little shocking to hear that. We hear a lot about Uganda and the Anti-Homosexuality Act, but I haven't really honestly seen Nigeria in the news regarding that as well. So it's a little surprising to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, it's also because we're a very big country. So we are the most populous Black nation in the world, and so we have a majority of our population, are across everywhere in the world, and they're everywhere you go, there's a Nigerian, as I like to say. But also because like this law, it's been there since 2014. It was signed into law in 2014. We've been fighting against it, and so we challenge it at court. what we do now is to make sure our community members know the distinction to make so that they don't get arrested for being gay. And so the law specifically says if someone that you know found you right-handed having sexual intercourse with another man or another woman, same-sex behavior, you could go to jail for 14 years. So if there's no evidence to prove that, then there's
Hmm.
to go to jail. So we make it difficult for them to find the evidence. So our community members, like, they know this, but also if your parents know that you were gay and did not report you, they could go to jail for 10 years.
Wow. Okay. But doesn't that make it hard for advocates too? Because doesn't speaking out publicly provide evidence?
Well, that's not the evidence they want. Like, they want, the law specifically says if you are caught in the act.
Okay. Okay.
So if you're caught in the act, you could go to jail for 14 years. So if nobody have caught you in the act, actually, I did a documentary with HBO recently, and one of my friends and colleagues was in the film, and he was arrested for being gay, and but he questioned the government. He said he wasn't caught in the act, and it became a funny meme on Instagram because he said, "If you didn't catch me." So it became a thing on social media, because that's true. That if you didn't catch the person, I was going to say what he said. If you didn't catch him red-handed having sex, that means there's no evidence to prove that he's gay. So this, again, just think about, this is what we're having to deal with in Nigeria, right? Like, in the
Yeah.
context of everything that's happening, this is what we're having to deal with.
Yeah, that's crazy. And I think also going back to like not seeing Nigeria in the news regarding these laws, I think we're also falling prey to just the normalization of things that happen. Like I was talking to someone the other day about Roe v. Wade and how that we were before that was overturned. When we were talked about it, it was like that's not going to happen. There's no way. And then when it did happen, it was so surreal. Like I cannot believe that people in this country in the U.S. cannot get abortions in certain states, and now it's almost become normalized. We've accepted it, and now it's not really front of mind anymore. And so I think it's important for people like you to keep the attention on this stuff and be like, hey, like wake up, this is not normal, we have to do something about it.
Yeah, it's like same for PEPFAR and USAID. Like, who would have thought like USAID would be gone in less than 5 days?
Yeah.
Like, this is insane. Like, I have no word to describe what just happened. Right? USAID provides life-saving services. These are people who have given their life to services, to servicing others around the world, and to sort of malaria, polio, all the diseases that affected people, the poorest people around the world, to make sure they have water, they have food, they have medication to stay alive. This is the work that USAID does. It's literally life-saving. And this is the kind of stuff that this government want to take away. Like, it's just heartbreaking to think about it. This is America. Like, it's almost unbelievable, but it's happening, and we are normalizing it. It's just like, okay, USAID probably is gone. Like, it is not okay. It is not okay. It is not okay to take medication from away from people who are dependent on it, because you, first of all, were the one that when they are provided gave them hope. Now you are taking that hope away. You
And
know,
made them dependent on it.
yeah, it's like having someone who has protected you for ages, who have been your guardian angel, now finally becoming the devil itself. It's
And
like,
that's the part that really gets me, because when I play devil's advocate in my mind, I go, okay, if I'm Elon and I'm Doge and I'm all these Republicans in the administration looking at the budget and earnestly trying to reduce the budget and help America,
mhm,
um, and I see there's just so much money that's going to PEPFAR and USAID, and maybe I don't agree with it, can I understand or have empathy for where compassion where they're coming from? And I can't, because at the end of the day, if that was me and I earnestly wanted to do this in a good and
mhm.
healthy way, there's no way I would pull the rug out overnight. I would say, okay, listen, we can't keep spending like this. Uh, we're giving you a heads up. You have a year to start figuring things out. We're going to help you build an infrastructure, work with other organizations, find funding, et cetera, and we're going to slowly taper that funding away. And we're going to be there to help you along the way. This isn't done in that way. They're just overnight, boom, out of here, goodbye. That's malicious.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think for us in the global health space, we welcome review. I think it's important. Like, if just like everything else in the world, if you work in the workspace, like, review and assessment is important to understand where are we spending money on, what is impactful, what is not impactful, Where do we need a change? I think we all should welcome that. Absolutely. But this is not a review. This is different because, again, if you're doing a review, you keep the people who have worked in the space to understand what they've done, to provide you with information of what they're doing, what is working, what is not working, how could we make it better. You provide a timeline of your review and your assessment and come up with solutions, not just firing everybody that does the work. Like, who is going to do the review? That's what I don't understand. This is not anything around public health. This is like, I don't even have the word for it. So this is not a review, it's something else. And I think, these are people who have an agenda in mind, who have something to prove. And this is not about saving money. It's going to cost America more money in the very near future because of what has happened this week. Because we're going to see increase in new HIV infections around the world. We are dismantling healthcare structures, healthcare systems. We are sending away qualified individuals, doctors and nurses, who are going to go to other sectors because people need to pay for their bills. They're not going to sit around and wait for the US government to come back and hire them again. They're going to go look for other jobs. These are qualified individuals who have decided not to go to the private sector, but to go to government because they care about people, because they care about the issues that we care about. And now they will go to the private sector workforce to take other jobs, and we're going to lose that workforce. And so it will take us years to build this, what we've just done, this 1 week or 2 weeks damage. It will take years to build it back, and it will cost American taxpayers more money. So this is not about saving money, which is insane. This is not about saving money. We need to make sure that we understand that it's not about DEI, it's not about saving money. It's an agenda that they have to dismantle global health because they don't believe in it.
Okay, so I just want to be really clear because we've heard about, many people know now about what happened with PEPFAR and the executive orders. A lot of folks have also heard, okay, they've put a waiver in place. And so I've had some conversations with people who are like, oh, it's great now. Thank the Lord that someone intervened and now there's a waiver and now they're getting money. And that's kind of, I think, where a lot of people in their mind think we're at. Like, oh, it was dangerous. And for the moment, we're okay. PEPFAR funding is back, and that might change in a few months, but for right now, everything's okay. However, I've seen articles and posts and people talking about the fact that there are still people not getting treatment for some reason. Can you bring some clarity to that? Are clinics still operating and giving treatment as normal?
So let me just put some context, right? So the way PEPFAR works, right? PEPFAR doesn't actually go on the ground and implement on its own, right? It depends on U.S. agencies like Department of Defense, USAID, CDC to help it implement because those agencies are on the ground. It depends on U.S. mission, the embassies on the ground, who then give money and contracts to large implementing partners, right? Like FHI 360, GPIGO, and others, who then go on the ground and sort of implement these programs, working with the Ministry of Health. So PEPFAR on its own doesn't actually go on the ground and implement programs. What has happened this week is that these agencies, like USAID, is not totally gone. So whatever USAID does, that doesn't, all of those things are still suspended or terminated. So the clinics that are led by or supported directly by USAID are still not providing services because they haven't received any kind of waiver. What they've received is termination notice.
Hmm.
And then we have others who have received the waivers, like the implementing partners, who have been told clearly that this waiver is to provide treatment, quote unquote. So anything outside of treatment, they cannot provide it. So PrEP, prevention services, structural interventions, community-led monitoring, gender-based violence prevention, PWITS clinic. These clinics that provide, injection drug users with some support. We have those other clinics who are still completely shut down because they don't apply to the waiver. The waiver on its own doesn't actually help you start work, right? Because some of these implementing partners still do not have resources. The way the US government works is that they have individuals, an agency within USAID, within PEPFAR, who actually directly pays these implementing partners. Those individuals have been fired. So there's no structure to pay people to start work. These implementing partners have been asked to start work without any kind of payment. So they cannot actually start work. So the start work order is just so vague. There is no money to start work. The waiver doesn't actually describe how to do any of this. So it's still, people are still pending any kind of like reassurance that any of this is continuing. For us at GBGMC, what we are doing is to make sure KP clinics that are led by key populations, that we are not going to wait till the US government figures itself out. we have to find a way to make sure our community can receive services. So what we're doing is trying to find out which clinics are there that are led by key populations, and what has happened to them. Are they shut down? How can we make sure they can continue to do the life-saving things that they do right now, so that our community members can be able to get their prep, get their treatment, get the services that they need, also create a space. So in Africa and around the world, unlike here in the US, a lot of community members do not have a lot of space to go to and feel seen and feel safe. So the power of safe space is so crucial. A lot of these big community-based organizations offer these safe spaces for gay men, trans people, sex workers, and people who enjoy drugs to go feel safe and feel seen, where they're not discriminated against, where they can actually access services in a safe space. So these places are now being shut down. People can no longer go there because it was funded by the US government. They even going as far as asking them to return the chairs, their computers, because it was bought and paid for by US taxpayers' money. This is insane and inhumane, right? It's like going to say, return every single thing we bought for you because it's our money. You don't just have to shut down your office, you also have to return everything. So for us, it's like the waiver, it's useless completely because it offers nothing. It literally offers nothing for communities, for other communities. It doesn't offer anything.
Yeah, thank you for providing that insight, because I think a lot of people just see the waiver and they think problem solved, but in practicality, it doesn't fix anything. Okay, well, you led it right where I was wanting to go, which is to talk a little bit more about GBGMC and Global Black Pride. Can you tell me about those organizations a little more, and how did you get involved?
Yeah, so GBGMC, Global Black Gay Men Connect, we are an organization that work in the intersection of HIV, human rights, and public health. So again, as Black gay men around the world, not just Black gay men, but gay men have the highest risk of HIV infections globally. And it's not because of who we are, it's because of how people treat us. And that's why we have, the highest risk of HIV infection. So for at GBGMC, we provide support, capacity building, networking for our community members to learn about research about prevention products, about treatment, so that we are able better to lead the services for our communities. We offer trainings, we offer capacity building, we do policy and advocacy. So for me, I got involved with GBGMC about 8 years ago at a conference, and we were discussing how to make sure Black gay men in Africa were speaking to Black gay men in the US and making those connections and sharing experiences and sharing data and sharing knowledge with each other so we can better advocate for ourselves. And so that's how it started. And now we've grown into this organization that supports people around the world, and around policy and advocacy. So we are very proud of the work that we're doing.
Can you talk a little bit about what capacity building is? I hear that quite often, and I'm afraid that maybe some of my audience don't really know what that means.
Yeah, I mean, we all have capacity, right? We all have experience and expertise in different ways, and I think for us, it's like, how do we make sure our community members understand the science behind PrEP, for instance, right? Like how it came to be. So making sure we are breaking it down and making sure they have access to the data, to the trial results, and making sure they understand the context, but also supporting them with resources, and capacity building also means empowerment. And so we provide resources for organizations to register, provide resources for them to do like emergency response programs. For instance, as you know, in a lot of countries, there are activists who are always under risk. So we provide resources to them for them to support this emergency response. But also we provide resources and support for them to be in a room where they can they can advocate better for themselves, right? For instance, they can come to the UN, they can go to meetings in DC, in Geneva, to advocate better for themselves.
So it's really about expanding what a person's capable of, both internally and with the help of external support.
Yeah, it's really about providing access because a lot of our community members
Mm.
do not have access, and sometimes we depend on others to speak for us. And so, for at GBGMC, I think it's important for our community members to speak for themselves, to give them the information that they need to be better advocates for themselves.
Now, I'm curious on a logistical level, do you receive at GBGMC government funding? And if so, is there any concern about your ability to communicate and do your job as it relates to DEI and prohibited language?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think DEI is an American thing. To be honest, it's so American. Like sometimes, like I don't even know what that is. Seriously. it's just an American thing, and I think there's an obsession with it. I think this is not something that, as an African or someone who works in global health, that I care about. I think the objective of it, obviously, it's important, and I think equity and access is crucial, and then giving people equal opportunities is important. But also, I think the obsession about it is just like insane for me. So at GBGMC, I think our work is based on science, and it's based on data, and it's based on evidence. And so, we don't worry about DEI. We don't care about it, to be honest. And then we are who we are, and the work that we do, it speaks for itself. And so for us, we don't worry about, our ability to receive resources from the U.S. government, because our work is based on science and data. And so again, and evidence can back that up. And so we work around human rights, and which is not DEI, and we work around public health, which is not DEI. It's about evidence, and it's about supporting people who are being discriminated against, who are being attacked because of who they are. So yeah, I think in the last year, yes, we've received resources from the U.S. government, not directly, but through an intermediary. And so we were hoping to get more resources this year. Actually, we're supposed to make 40% of our budget this year, and now we don't know if that's going to happen anymore. So we are hoping that there's people, even though I'm giving them a lot of credit, that who still believe in science and evidence within this government. So we are hoping that there are people who still believe in that, who can support us to do the work that we do.
Yeah, I just want to mention this document that I received recently through a friend, an email from the U.S. Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation by Ranking Member Ted Cruz. You may be familiar with Ted Cruz. And it says DEI on it, and it says how the Biden-Harris NSF, or National Science Foundation, politicized science. And its definition for DEI, which is in big bold letters, I'll put it on the screen, for DEI is division, extremism, and ideology. It's just, I don't understand the fixation.
That is crazy. How is it division? I mean, again, I really don't know care about the obsession is driving me crazy, but like it's like insane. Like, okay, like for public health and human rights, like we care about people because they are at risk of HIV. And so evidence has proven that, you have to go where the virus is at, just like COVID. So we have to go meet people where they are. We have to give people where we can reach the most impact. So when in this instance, it's about black women in the U.S. in the South, who are mostly have higher risk of HIV. Black gay men in the South who have higher risk of HIV. So evidence has proven that. And the reason why they have high risk of HIV is because of racism and economical barriers that make it difficult for them to access services. So how is that D? I really don't understand. In Africa, it's African women, and because of discrimination, because of like religious beliefs. In Africa, again, it's gay men because of religious beliefs and discrimination that makes people at higher risk of HIV. So science, the most even both Republicans and Democrats, we have folks who believe in science. PEPFAR was founded by the Bush, so a Republican president. So this is not about a party thing. It's about believing that as Americans, we should care about people around the world because we know viruses do not have borders. It can come here. So I really don't like. I don't understand the obsession about this. I just feel like it's insane. Again, whatever it is from the U.S. context, I know there's politics around it and what it means, but I think from a public health perspective, I really don't understand it. I really don't. I don't know the correlation about DEI and public health. That it doesn't really work.
Are you, as an organization, developing a strategy moving forward to deal with the Trump administration and their policies?
Yes. So this week we just launched our 5 points action plan. I think for us, it's basically about we cannot wait for 90 days. Our communities cannot wait for 90 days. There are people who are dying right now, who are key populations, who cannot have access to PrEP, their life-saving medication. So at GBGMC, because of the work that we do and the communities we stand with and for, we have to act. So we are launching a 5 point action plan, which is one of them is to keep KP clinics open. So they are key population-led clinics, gay men, transgender people, sex workers, where they receive services. We have to make sure they stay open. So we're focusing on 60 clinics around the world who serve up to 400,000 key populations around the world to make sure they stay open for the next 90 days. A lot of them have been closed. A lot of them have received termination notices. So our goal is to fundraise an emergency fundraising campaign to keep those clinics open. The second action plan is keeping key population-led organizations, LGBTQ organizations, open, because those organizations provide life-saving services. Them being there is crucial for our community members because, like I said earlier on, they provide a safe space for community members to engage and share and learn and be in a space that they can feel seen. So those organizations, most of them are laying off staff members right now. Most of
Hmm.
them will have to shut down their offices because they cannot pay rent anymore. So we are fundraising to keep those organizations open around the world because it's crucial. The services they provide are crucial for our communities. And then the third action plan is a campaign about really sharing, information and data about what the impact is that's happening now around the world. We're already seeing clinics shut down. We're already seeing community members not having access to treatment. So how do we document and share that back to people who care, who want to listen? So again, it's a media campaign to share more information about the impacts that this stop work or this freeze is having. A second part of that is to also look at additional options, right? The US government might not come back to this space. How do we make sure other private sector, other countries can step in to provide this life-saving support? So we're looking at to engaging, gathering this information, this data to show the impact, but also using it as an advocacy tool to other government and private sector and individuals who care to step in to fill this gap that the US government might not come back to fill. And the fourth part is that, again, for the first time in our lifetime, at least for me, we have an opportunity to develop a program that is truly community led, that is not dependent on one government, right? Because the US government, with the Key Population Program, they have had a lot of say, a lot of restrictions about what you cannot do, who can do what, which organizations can do what. A lot of the programs have been led by large implementing partners who are not necessarily key populations led. So for the first time, we can actually design a program that we can think we know better how to serve our communities and we can design this program. So we are thinking about what does a long-term plan looks like? How do we actually look at a plan to develop our own program that is completely led by communities? And the fourth part is also part of that is to look at sustainability. So we cannot depend on one government. We have to look for options. We have to make sure we look for options. We like so that this doesn't happen again. Because what happened this week is that none of us had a plan B. None of us planned for what would happen if this happened, right? And it has happened now. It has opened all of our eyes. We cannot be reliant on a single government to provide services for our community. So we have to look for other options to make sure we have a plan B, plan A, plan C. So that's our action plan that we have launched this week.
That really moves me. The part where you are looking for and identifying the opportunity in all of this. I think that will really resonate with a lot of people because right now people are like, what is, like, this is all bad.
Mhm.
There's nothing good that can come from this. And that is such a devastating, hopeless feeling. And for you to really identify and highlight the opportunity here within all of the chaos and the tragedy is so profoundly impactful and empowering. So thank you for doing that. That's
No,
incredible.
thank you.
Um, what how are you doing the fundraising? And can regular folks watching this, for example, get involved?
Absolutely. People can go to our website. I'm going to share a link where people can donate and also share the action plan as well. We just launched it this week, so we are fundraising right now for it. We have a fundraising strategy that we're going to use to sort of reach out to private sector individuals. And again, we don't have time to wait. This is an emergency, and so we have to respond for our communities. If you care about gay people in Africa, if you care about transport in Africa, if you care about anyone at all, you should care about this.
And this is direct impact. Like you are helping clinics on the ground right now keep their doors open and staff members employed.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic. You mentioned you're going to be sharing info about the impact, and also that will inform how the private sector can step in or other organizations. Where is that going to be posted? How can people keep up with that?
Yeah. I mean, as you can tell, the last 5, 6, 10 days there's a lot happening, and it's difficult to keep track of what's going on, and we all can feel overwhelmed with the information. So we just launched a data analytics campaign to my colleagues at GBGMC. We are gathering all of the data, all of the impact that this is having. So we're going to be sharing a report in the next 6 days about just the first report about the impact, right? To understand, like, this is the impact. These are clinics that have been shut down. These are the people they are reaching that cannot no longer be reached. And these are people who are going to get infected if they don't keep their services open. So that report will be out in the next 6 days.
Okay, fantastic. Please, if I don't reach out, keep me in the loop. However, that needs to happen, because definitely want to share that here as well. I think I'm putting together a podcast that's about storytelling,
Mhm.
because I think, yes, it's important to have information and it's important to have facts, but it's important people learn by way of human storytelling. That's why movies and TV and media is so important, in books. So being able to see faces and hear the stories, and if you're going to give examples of who is actually being impacted, that's, I think, the most profound impact that you can have.
Absolutely. But also, I think one of the reasons why I care about this, not of care regardless, but I think, in these times, right, it's easy for people to see the bigger picture and in terms of the global health space and to feel like we all have to fight for everybody at the same time. But when it really matters most, nobody's going to care about the gay people and the trans people or the sex workers or people who inject drugs or young people or women, young women in Africa, because they are going to say, you guys are the problem. And that's why we got here in the first place. And it's going to be easy for people to throw us under the bus. And so, again, it's really, really important for people to know this context, right? This is happening right now. People are speaking about the bigger picture. Nobody is caring about our communities, and we really, really, really have to take that into notice because we have a long way to go, and so people are caring about the bigger picture, the treatment programs, keeping people alive, and asking people to go to the public care centers that discriminate us, that do not allow us to be who we are, and so it's a very difficult time. We all have to pay attention to make sure we understand the impact that is having in our communities, our family members. I call them, like, around the world who care, who are like me, or a young gay man in Uganda, or a young trans woman in India, or peewits in Vietnam who have no access to services, who relies on a community-based organization to stay open so they can get their services, or a peer educator who has no job because of who they are, who relies on the $5 that they receive every month from the community-based organization to keep their food coming in. So this is really important. And I think we all should really care about that, and we should pay attention to that and not let the larger picture of everything that's going on overwhelm us so much that we lose the context that our communities are really under attack right now.
And that's definitely part of the strategy. I had a conversation recently with my good friend Peppermint. She's a trans activist and an actress, and we were talking about how everyone is broadly has been affected at the same time regarding funding cuts here in the US, especially, and how everybody's heads are spinning and they're confused and they don't know what's happening. And that's part of the plan. Everybody's afraid and everybody's confused for their own. So the idea is, once people start getting their monies back, unrelated to LGBTQIA or HIV, they're going to be so relieved and so happy that they got their little piece of the pie back, that it's going to be so easy to overlook these particular groups that are still not getting their funding back and are being erased from government websites and funding globally as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's like giving people the yardstick or the reason to be homophobic again, to be transphobic again, to do what they've always wanted to do, which is not care about our communities. And a lot of government, U.S. government has been always be pushing to say we have to include our communities. We have to make sure, like, gay, trans, LGBTQI people, key populations are part of the equation, and part of decision making at country level. But with this government, we know that's not going to happen anymore. People are going to be able to freely exclude our communities in conversations that are crucial at country level because they know that they've gotten the go ahead from their donor, which is the US government, to do what they think they should be doing, something that aligns with their culture or with their religion. And so now the same values we've seen in Kenya, when the Kenyan government is happy right now because of the trans ban, because he agrees with the president, the Trump president, that his values aligns with the Kenyan values. A lot of government are going to be doing that. And we have to stand up. And here in the US as well, as you can see, a lot of healthcare centers are already changing their programming to exclude trans people. And we have to pay attention to that. And we have to make sure we don't fall into that. We speak up. And right now, again, I can only imagine what my trans siblings and sisters, brothers and sisters are feeling right now. I think from the global context, right, it's really, really difficult. We've seen a lot of trans led clinics already shut down completely. They are not even part of the conversation. Like the global context, right? They are not even part of the conversation because people just assume that there's no way trans programs are ever going to be funded again by the U.S. government. So who's going to step in? Who's going to fill that gap? We don't know, right?
And people who are feeling secure, if you are part of the LGB community and not the TQIA plus, that you are safe and secure at present, that might not necessarily be the case either. Because
Naive.
a friend sent me an article this morning that Pete Hegseth was just confirmed by the Senate as the new U.S. Secretary of Defense, and he's considered an extreme far right Christian who has talked about needing the Old Testament of the Bible, capital punishment for infringements of the Old Testament law, such as homosexuality, and having rigidly patriarchal families and churches be part of the way things are here. Very Handmaid's Tale, in other words.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's no LGB without a T, right? Because there will be no movement without our trans family. Like they have been the bedrock of our movement. And so anyone that seems to think that this is a good thing should take a step back and realize they are going to come for you too. They are going to come for you
Absolutely.
too. If you think that you're safe right now, they're going to come for you too. So you have to make sure. And for us, even from a science and public health perspective, like for the key populations and trans people even have higher risk of HIV infections than gay men. So again, we none of us are safe in terms of just public health perspective as well. So we have to make sure our trans siblings and sisters, brothers and sisters, are part of the conversation, and we are fighting and speaking up for them as well. And so, don't be happy because you think LGB sort of protects you. No, they are going to come for you very, very soon, if not already.
As I'm starting to wrap up here, I'm curious about whether you are going to be attending AIDS Watch at the end of March.
Yeah, we are, and we are going to be there.
And can you describe for the folks at home what AIDS Watch is and its importance?
Yeah, AIDS Watch is an advocacy space for community-led and based organizations around the U.S. to come together to sort of showcase and sort of prove to not prove, but as advocate with elected officials about why they should care about HIV and AIDS.
And you're going to be there. Do you have any specific goals while there?
I mean, I think we are all. I mean, I wanted to say I'm so angry, but like, I feel like we've
Yeah.
got a little bit like led back by our elected officials, especially Democrats, right? I feel like they are not speaking out enough. Just tweeting or putting that statement in not enough. I want to see just as angry as I am because people are dying, and you will sit it down there and tweeting. Like same for the Republicans as well. Like people are dying. You want to care. You need to show. We need to show them how this is hurting our communities. How we've all felt attacked. Like we felt like the HIV community has been come for just in the first instance. So what did they do to deserve this? I don't know. So again, I think for us, we have to really speak up and challenge and ask our elected officials to speak up more and to do something and not just sit there and tweet and make press conferences or release statement. We need to see action.
Well, I've never attended the event before, but I'm should be going with Plus Life
Mhm.
at the end of March, so I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope to see you there as well.
Yeah, we'll be there for sure. Absolutely.
Are you going to any other of the major conferences, CROI or
Yeah, I'm gonna be at Croy. I'm gonna be at
you will? Okay,
in Kigali in July.
Kigali, great. I should be at both as well.
Great.
Okay, so we touched on this a little bit, but what, if anything else, can folks at home do to support?
I mean, I think the people should just speak up more and understand what's going on. And so, like, yes, we should care about what's going on domestically, sort of the potential termination of Department of Education or others, or like, but also like Learn about what USAID does, why it's important, right? What CDC does globally, why it's important, and why these are life-saving agencies. And you should educate yourself and learn and see how you can help and be a spokesperson for people who cannot be spokespersons for themselves. I think what has happened is like those people who depend on these agencies around the world did not do anything to deserve it. They didn't even get a vote for whatever this what happened. They are just in the receiving end of American decisions. And it's so sad because they have no choice and they have to depend on whatever we do here. And so, we have to learn about how this is impacting people who have no idea or had the choice to choose any of this.
You mentioned a documentary earlier. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, I did a documentary with HBO in 2022. It's called The Legend of the Underground. It focuses on my story as an advocate, but also looking at the queer community in Nigeria and how far we've come. It's very similar to Paris is Burning in terms of underground stories. Yeah.
And so that's out now. People can go to HBO and watch it.
Yeah, it's on the HBO Max. So they did not pay
Fantastic.
me for this, so I'm giving.
What was that?
I said they didn't pay me for this, so I'm giving them a free.
You heard that, HBO? Send this man a check.
Yeah, seriously, send me a check.
Okay, well, I'll put a link to that in the description box below so
Great.
people can access that as well. Is there anything else you'd like to share that we haven't been able to address today?
No, I think this is it. Thank you. I hope people care about what's going on and sort of learn about GBGMC and the work that we do.
Awesome. And where can folks go to follow you and or your work?
GBGMC is on Instagram, on Twitter, on all of the social media platforms. We are GBGMC International. Just GBGMC International.
I'll put a link to that as well, to the different social media down below. Well, Michael, this has been a very insightful conversation. Fantastic. Thank you so much. I know, like I said, you're incredibly busy. So thank you for spending the time with me.
No, thank you for having me. This was fun.
And anytime you have any updates or clarity around what's happening, including, what you're going to be releasing in the next 6 days, please keep me informed. I would love to have you back on at any point in the future to also give updates as they come, which I'm sure they will. Everyone at home, please comment below your questions, your thoughts, so I can follow up with you and possibly with Michael as well. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you get a notification every time a new video comes out. And please share this with anyone who might find value in this type of content. Those are the best ways that you can help support me and folks like Michael on this channel. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, Michael.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers.